Senator Jack Reed. He's a Democrat from Rhode Island. He's the ranking member of the Senate Armed Services Committee. Senator Reed, thanks very much for joining us. First of all, Senator McCain, your chairman, says there's a briefing coming for the committee. What can you tell us about that?
So we're working together, Senator McCain and I, to get a briefing, a classified briefing on what happened, to raise many of the questions which both Barbara and Admiral Kirby raised. What about the intelligence? What about the air cover? What about evacuation plans? Why was it the response slow? All those questions need to be fully answered and in a classified setting. And then I think Senator McCain will determine if more must be done or should be done.
What do you think of the Defense Secretary, James Mattis? He's a retired four-star general. His complaint that even he, and he's the Defense Secretary, even he at this point doesn't have all the information.
I think that's very disturbing. The Secretary of Defense and National Command Authority should be able, in this time, we're talking about days, not hours, to be able to assemble a pretty good picture of what happened. There's still some outstanding questions, I'm sure, but that's dismaying to have the SecDef be able to say that even he is disappointed.
Statement for President Trump on Niger and what happened, as you probably know by now, was actually circulated around the White House from the National Security Council the day after the incident. But officials, for whatever reason, chose to let the White House press secretary, Sarah Sanders, talk about it at a briefing instead of the President of the United States issuing a strong statement. He actually didn't even mention Niger, what happened in Niger, for some 12 days. Why the delay and the decision to not have the president make that initial statement?
Well, at this point, that's another issue that we would like to pursue in terms of why there was such a lack of response in terms of notifying the American public, then also reaching out to the families. It seems unusual. Had this been a successful operation, I think there would have been a tweet within minutes. So I think we have to ask that question also.
There are lots of questions that need to be answered as far as Niger is concerned. Once again, if the U.S. doesn't learn the lessons, it will happen again. There are a lot of U.S. troops, not only in Niger, but elsewhere in Africa. I suspect that most of the American public has no idea what those troops are up to, what the mission is, what they're doing right now, and how dangerous some of those situations are. And I assume your committee, the Senate Armed Services Committee, is going to be looking into all of that, not just Niger, but what's going on in neighboring countries as well. Let's get to North Korea, the crisis on the Korean Peninsula. Senator Reed, you're just back from a trip to South Korea. You were up at the demilitarized zone. What impression did you get there to President Trump's stance on North Korea, the threats going back and forth between Kim Jong-un and the president?
Well, first of all, it's the most dangerous situation that we face in a very dangerous world because they already have medium-range missiles with nuclear capabilities and chemical weapons. This is a very sensitive situation. The back and forth between the president and Kim Jong-un is, I don't think, particularly helpful. I think the president should make it clear that we have a range of options, but I think he should be much more supportive of Secretary Tillerson's diplomatic efforts. The president says diplomacy is our first approach, then we should do it seriously, etc. I think the claims that Kim Jong-un will make will be disturbing, provocative. That seems to be the nature of the North Korean leader. And unfortunately, we only have a warning of several hours if he does contemplate some type of launch. But at this point, I would hope it would just be more rhetorical than actual, and we have the time to use diplomacy.
As you know, the president is going to make a major visit to several countries in Asia next month, including a stop in South Korea. The White House hasn't said if the president will definitely visit the demilitarized zone, the South Korean part of the demilitarized zone. That's the buffer area separating North and South Korea. You were just there. I think all U.S. presidents have actually made a visit to the DMZ. At this very, very explosive and sensitive moment, Senator, do you believe President Trump should visit the DMZ? What message would that send to allies and to North Korea?
Well, I think at this very sensitive time, you have to almost wait till the day before, the day of, to see what the situation is. So I do think they have to factor in intelligence. There's an issue of security, and that has to be the first consideration. And then again, what message does President Trump want to say? Typically, our presidents and vice presidents who have gone there have made comments, but not provocative comments. They've simply noticed the DMZ and our commitment to the people of South Korea going back decades. I think something like that would be appropriate for the president to do, but I do think they have to consider security and also the possibility that those comments will be more provocative than historically consistent.
Yeah, the White House hasn't said for sure whether the president will visit the DMZ. When the president was asked about it the other day, he left open the possibility. He said, somebody said this could be very provocative, and he wanted to know more about it. All right, Senator Jack Reed of Rhode Island, thanks very much for joining us.
Thanks, Wolf.